वैष्णव जन तो जे पीड़ बराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे पर दुखे उपकार करे पर दुखे उपकार करे मन अभिमान राणे रे वैष्णव जन को देने गई है जे भीड़ बराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन को देने गई है जे भीड़ बराई
This poem, this Vaishnava Jan To, let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe you can recite it for us in the Gujarati, or at least the
first
couple of
lines.
lines that everyone knows. And Gandhi ji, as a Gujarati, knows this as part of his Vaishnava upbringing, right? And he decides to include it as a regular routine prayer in his kind of prayer book or his bhajanavali that he creates. But this is something that he already introduces into his repertoire in South Africa, even before he comes back to India. So I want to look at that history of the adoption of the song and the trajectory that Gandhiji then travels with this song, and then what is the song, what kind of proportions does it assume, you know, in the Gandhian movement and so on. But let's start by actually looking at the words of the song, and maybe you can explain to us the nuance of various terms. I was interested in this idea of the Vaishnav Jan, exactly what does it mean here? And of course then the, you know, Peed Parai Jane Re, so that idea of understanding another's pain. Yeah, so why don't you, I mean, you're the expert, so why don't you, I'm sure you know it by heart anyway, and you've translated it very beautifully as well, right? So just maybe the original lines, couple of them. And
I'll just say the original lines. The first stanza. Vaishnava Jan To તેને રે કહીએ છે પીડ પરાઈ જાણે રે પર દુઃખે ઉપકાર કરે તોય મન અભિમાન ના આણે રે. That is the first stanza. And I think that sets the tone for everything else that comes after that in the poem. So what is this also comes from the ethos, cultural ethos and poetic ethos of the 15th and 16th century Gujarat, where a definition of a truly religious person.
So tell us a translation, literal translation, and then maybe your interpretation a little bit.
So the one call only that just to, that word to is so important in this. Only that one, call only that one, a Vaishnava, who understands another's pain, who helps or does and offers something to someone in pain, in paradukhe, in another's pain. Man abhimana na aane, toye man abhimana na aane re.
Right.
But does not feel, does not let pride enter into his heart. Because at times, the idea is that at times doing good deeds can also be a source of ahankar and arrogance.
Yes.
And that is something, you do it as somebody help someone as a human. It is the human connection that is at the basis of all morality. The poem is in the form of a definition. So
who is a Vaishnava?
Who is a Vaishnava?
Right.
This is, he does that he or she
Has
uh,
these characteristics,
These characteristics,
yeah.
one who does that, one who does
These
that. one who-
qualities and
so it's the
virtues.
entire poem is a definition.
So this long list of virtues, right, and of personal qualities and of virtuous behavior and actions and so on, these qualify an individual to be recognized as a true Vaishnav. But really, as you said, I think the beginning is significant. That the first property is to be able to relate to another's suffering or pain.
Connect, yeah.
And connect and help, reach out to help, have that instinct to help, and not think of it as a form of self-aggrandizement.
Exactly.
So why now do you think that this appeal to Gandhi, and what is the journey that the song makes in the Gandhian, in the Gandhian life, or in the Gandhian narrative?
Gandhi was born in a Vaishnava family, and he grew up as a Vaishnava. Then he goes to England.
Yeah.
He reads the Gita there. Then he comes in contact with people from various religious traditions. And then when he goes to South Africa, it is a time of a kind of spiritual turmoil for him. He is churning, and he is trying to decide on his path. That's when he is communicating with this Jain philosopher, Srimad Rajchandra. It's very interesting that it is Srimad Rajchandra who tells him to look back into his own tradition, and especially read bhakti poets. And that kind of gradually draws Gandhi's attention to the richness of these traditions. It is also during this time, in his later years in South Africa, he has this Phoenix settlement, and he has some family members who have also come from Gujarat, and they are making like experiments with new kind of life, communal living, simplicity, and this kind of things.
The labor of your hands.
Labor with your hands. And then there are his friends who had joined his first Satyagraha movement in South Africa. So it was during this time that the family members who, he writes later about this in a letter. So it was during this time that these family members who had come from Gujarat, they sing bhajans in the evening, and Vaishnava Jan To appears repeatedly because it was very popular also among them. There were his Christian and Muslim friends who also loved the bhajan so much because it's all about being a good human being. And so often it is Gandhi writes that they requested that Vaishnava, the word Vaishnava is replaced by Christian. So Christiana Jana.
Right.
Instead of Vaishnava Jana, Muslima Jana. So this is where he says that he recognized that this is a kind of song that would appeal to
Across
traditions and also to large masses. When he returns to India and establishes his ashram in Ahmedabad, and evening prayers become a part of it. That's when it begins to be sung in that context. And then Pandit Narayan Khare said that the tune that everyone knows now is in Mishra Kamaj, and it was set by Narayan Khare.
I see.
And then it takes a journey of its own. And it is very interesting, during Gandhi's lifetime, it became very popular. It became his musical anthem. Yeah, musical emblem, just as Charkha was his visual emblem.
Right.
It was sung at all important moments in his life, during the Salt March, during very important events in his own life, like his son's wedding, his wife's death, and also at the beginning and end of the various fasts he undertook. But two very important things that I want to just mention, which are, in my view, are extremely important. Why Vaishnava Jan To? And what is, if you look at Gandhi's spiritual journey, you see that in the whole of New Testament, the one part of the New Testament that Gandhi is most influenced by or inspired by is the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount is also in form of a definition. So, the blessed is the one who does that, the blessed is the meek, and they will, so it is that connection.
For they shall inherit the earth.
It's very easy to see why he was in search of something that defined a deeply spiritual person in terms of moral integrity and human empathy. And so this is, it enters the ethos in this way, but in this, and this is how it is taken from a purely devotional context into a public discourse and as a part of social reconstruction.
Right.
The one very, very important thing that about Vaishnava Jan To is that in early 1920s, if I am not exactly incorrect about the dates, he was in debate with Orthodox Hindus of Gujarat, where about the schools he was developing for the Dalits, Dalit children, and inclusion of them in the schools and things like that. And so for this reason, Orthodox Gujarat, people from Gujarat, and at that time there was a Gujarati journal, I'm forgetting the name, but they kind of wrote a series of very articles scathingly critical of Gandhi. And in response to that, Gandhi writes, they say you are not a Vaishnava, you are not a Hindu, things like that. And Gandhi says that I define myself as a Vaishnava, I consider myself a Vaishnava. I will continue to consider myself a Vaishnava.
Who are you
because I am defining myself as a Vaishnava in terms of this bhajan. So this bhajan becomes the basis of that argument. And there are 2 long articles that he wrote in Navjivan at that time.
I mean, what I'm getting from your account so far is that the term Vaishnav is really significant, not because it flags a particular historically constituted religious identity of a community or a sect with, certain sectarian, with a deity and followers and a certain, kind of structure of that community and so on. But rather because it becomes a kind of window, through which the kind of light that passes through it is essentially defining any kind of truly devoted, pious and spiritually committed individual or someone with what you could call perhaps true religious value, which is why in South Africa you have Christians and Muslims saying, that's the kind of person I want to be as a true Christian. That's the kind of person I want to be as a true Muslim. That's the kind of person I want to be as a good Hindu. So they're all essentially tokens of a type, but it's the type that we are after, right? That we are after the kind of essential quality of what it means to be a good human being who can relate both to God and to other fellow humans, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's a kind of warrant for certain possibilities of being human, rather than a rigid definition of a particular identity. Right?
Yeah.
And
so
that
you summarized it beautifully, yes.
Yeah, and that Gandhiji gets.
Yeah.
Perhaps because of his experiences in South Africa, perhaps because of his dialogues with Srimad Rajchandra, the Jain guru who he was close to.
Yes.
Perhaps also because of his
Own search.
own search, but also his political wisdom.
Yeah.
Which informs his entire project in a sense. That here is something that helps glue a diverse set of followers.
Yeah.
A diverse community of individuals or groups gathering around a central political idea like Swaraj or Satyagraha or Khadi or Charkha or whatever it is at that moment, or communal harmony. Here is something that attracts a plurality of individuals of different particular descriptions and different identities and draws them into a common framework.
Yes.
Which in a sense transcends religious particularities and is in that way perhaps what we could understand as somewhat secular, right? Because it's a set of virtues and those virtues can travel across traditions.
Yeah.
They're essentially virtues of a humane kind, right? They're essentially about how you relate to
another.
others in the world.
Yeah.
And what kind of relationships you have, what kind of integrity informs your actions and so on, which has nothing really to do with what your identity by birth is in terms
Right.
of your caste or your religion or your ethnicity or so on. So there's a kind of transcultural value to this set of virtues. Any human being of any tradition or any background can possibly relate to it. And they do apparently.
I have discovered at least more than 200 really profoundly appealing performances.
I see.
And they were not just in India or in Gujarat, but all over the world, associated with any kind of peace building or humanitarian cause. People sing this even if they don't know the language. That really does, and people don't know the meaning, but it has become an emblem of what it means to be a good human being.
Right.
Many people don't even know that the poet was Narsi Mehta. He is, even Gandhi is kind of people, some people don't even know that it was Gandhi's favorite.
Right.
But I'll just to give you one example, I read about a news, it was a news article in Indian Express in 2011. And a group of activists, political activists, were traveling from Delhi through Iran to Gaza. And on their many stops, they sang Vaishnava Jan To. So, I mean, many of them did not know the language, but it was as an emblem of peace that they adopted it. And in my own city, Boston, some young students started a chapter of an organization called Nanni Kali, which is for for education for young girls in India, and they raise funds, and the young people there don't know the language or anything, but they thought it proper to start the event with Vaishnava Jan To.
Right.
And when Sonu Nigam, this is a very, so when Sonu Nigam, when we had, Harvard had its first female president, woman president.
This is before Drew Gilpin, or?
Yeah, it was Drew Gilpin. When she was inaugurated, the South Asian Students Association at Harvard requested that at least one song from South Asia should be sung there.
Right.
And Sonu Nigam was invited. Sonu Nigam decided to sing Vaishnava Jan To.
Right.
So my professor Diana Eck wrote to me and said, Neelima, you have to come. He is singing Vaishnava Jan To at this very important event.
Right.
So the South Asian Students Association had organized an interview with him the previous evening.
With Sonu Nigam.
With Sonu Nigam. And there are many people, so I didn't have much time to talk to him. But I said, I only have one question. And I said, of all these thousands of songs you could have chosen from,
Right.
why did you choose this one?
Right.
And he said that, you know, what song could better represent the spirit of India to an international audience. And so that was, I mean, I was very, very touched by it.